Okay, so first of all, thank you for all that came. This is a somewhat of a quick rundown of Pokemon, which is changing so quickly that when we first put the subject out there, we've had to modify the deck a couple of times because it really is happening that fast, which is actually turning into kind of a basis of the whole deck, is how fast things happen and how nimble you can be as a marketer for those sort of things. So this will be about 20 minutes, and then at the end of the 20 minutes we'll have questions. There's a lot of Pokemon experts in the crowd, so they'll probably speak up before I do. But overall, you'll get the gist of it. So this isn't only about Pokemon. This is about what marketers can do with Pokemon or anything else that comes up, because Pokemon's not going to be the last quick fad, if you will. If anything, it's the first of augmented reality that's really taken off like this. So the rundown of Pokemon started a long time ago. Nintendo, 1996. Even before that, there were television shows. There were Pokemon cards. It had a very kind of a big advocacy that was a little bit quiet and always around, but it did need a little bit of a mouthpiece, or needed a little bit more technology to uncover all those people that were out there that were advocates of it. So when you said Pokemon, people would be like, oh yeah, I remember that. It's the same sort of, and we'll get into some other examples, it's the same sort of thing that you'll see that with old brands of, if you can recognize the name, then there will be somebody out there that will be looking to exploit it in some ways. So it's the second most successful video game-based media franchise in the world. It is enormous in Japan. It's like Hello Kitty and Pokemon, the two biggest brands over there. Pokemon Go, it's nothing really new. It's essentially what they did was they took augmented reality, and then they took a mapping system, and then they took a brand that's well known and they mashed it all together. It was a really good remix of different technologies and brands, and made it interactive. But the other thing that they did that was really ingenious was that they gamified it. So they gave people rankings. They made it interactive. They made it so that you had herds of people going around parks looking for Pokemon, so that they could get ranked higher and higher and higher. A lot of these games that have come out that are associated with brands aren't doing that. They haven't done it in the past, where they haven't really gamified it. They've made it more an individual achievement, not so much of a group achievement like Pokemon has done. So it really had a lot of sticky triggers to the game that caught on. Went viral overnight, and then creators have revealed monetization, sponsored locations will happen soon. We'll get into the faults, some of the things that have gone wrong, and these are the slides that are fairly new, because when the topic first came up, everything was great for Pokemon. That has changed dramatically. Some of the socioeconomic impact is device makers stand to make billions in revenue generated from downloads. That's a potential. Nintendo stock skyrocketed when this thing first came out, and what we see is, just with how quickly media moves, people react very, very quickly on those things, and it explodes. I mean, it went up. I think the numbers were something like 15% over the course of a couple days, but then plummeted because one of the board members one of the board members on Nintendo. They asked him what kind of economic impact is it going to have on the company, and they said, "Oh, not very much." It was kind of like a slip that he shouldn't have said, and when he said that, it got out to the investors, and the investors all sold their stock. So it went down very, very quickly, just as it went up. So this is something that I'm kind of introducing into this, and this is one of those that was a new slide, but it's the hype cycle. It's how fast things are introduced, adopted, and then either dismissed or further adopted into a more sustainable manner. So anytime new technology comes around, or a new game, or something, you go through a technology trigger and then a peak of inflated expectations. So everybody thinks that, I'll use an example besides Pokemon. Facebook comes around and they go, oh, we can get rid of Google AdWords. You know, that the peak of expectations is it's going to take over something that already exists that isn't satisfying the need that they already have. But then they come to reality and it goes to the trough of disillusionment where they go, well, maybe it isn't exactly what we thought it would be. And so there's a lot of disappointment. You see a lot of intimidators, or I mean, not impersonators, and you get a lot of other brands that maybe drop off. So brands that aren't Facebook or brands that like Friendster or MySpace will go away because they can't monetize their model. That will happen in the trough. And then the slope of enlightenment is how that company has adjusted to be more sustainable over the long term. And we're seeing this happen with games and brands, just as it happens with technology. But the real trick of this whole thing is that the adoption rate is getting shorter and shorter, and the dismissal rate is getting faster and faster. So people are adopting things very quickly because they have smartphones, and smartphones are basically the world at your fingertips. And so if they want to play a game, all they got to do is download it. It takes fractions of a second, and they can get playing. And then they can realize if it's good for them or not good for them. Then they'll uninstall it if it's bad, which they see. Pokemon loses its luster, sheds more than 10 million users. So these are daily active users. They had 45 million daily active users, and they dropped 10 million in the course of about 2 weeks. So people essentially, they downloaded it, they realized, okay, maybe it's not for me, and they stopped using it. They lost those 10 million even as they launched into other countries. So they probably lost even more than that 10 million because they brought on Japan, they brought on Thailand, they brought on Indonesia, and there was one other country that they brought on. But it was, so they're adding users just as fast. They're actually adding users slower than they're losing them. So this hype cycle is happening much quicker than it did before. And the other problem with brands is that their methods of delivery are much quicker, but they're not adopting any faster. So now they have this huge audience. They're not updating their maps fast enough. They're not updating the gameplay fast enough. The other problem is that their server was down a lot of the time. When it first came out, they were jamming up the servers, and the servers would crash, and then people wouldn't be interested anymore. If we date back to when Facebook first launched, one of their biggest things were, we're never going to go down. One of the problems with MySpace is it was down all the time. The servers would crash, same with Friendster, and then people would just go away. Facebook, they loaded up on VC funding, and they said, we're just going to invest a lot into servers, and we're never going to go down. Same with Twitter. Twitter used to go down all the time. Everybody remembers the fail whale, because the whale would pop up, and you're like, can't use Twitter today. Fantastic. Facebook didn't want to be that. Problem with Pokemon is they are the Twitter of when it comes to reliability. They're just not, they're not there because they weren't prepared for it. But anyways, because these cycles are getting so much shorter, brands are not adopting to the delivery system, and they're not updating their systems fast enough. So it's scaring people off. But here's the other point, which I already zoomed through a little bit. But we've seen this happen before. So other brands have done this where they've started, then they've been refreshed. Power Rangers, we actually worked with Power Rangers, but they started it in 96, right, Willie? 96? Huh? 93. 93. We started working with them when they refreshed the brand in 2010, and then now they're coming out with their first movie in 2017. Or second movie technically, but first kind of revamp of a movie system. Kind of like the way the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did things, where they look so nice and innocent over here, and they're a little scary and weird looking over there. But I remember these guys, and then when those guys came out, I was like, whoa, they're a lot bigger. So it's amazing what Michael Bay does. Same with Transformers. You know, this is kind of like, hey, he still looks like a semi-truck over there, not so much. Brands are continually being refreshed and brought back to life. And they're doing that because society hinges and can adopt things that they're familiar with at a much faster scale. And so just happening on a regular basis. Even Mad Libs are coming back. I remember doing Mad Libs when I was really young, and I had a blast doing them. But now they're coming back in a more digital form, and they're kind of tying people together as well, so making it more viral. So how does this relate to you? So for one thing is understanding generational differences. The generations are, I mean, they're more tech savvy. They're adopting things much quicker, but they also, if we look at things, we're seeing generations having commonalities to where Gen X may have like the Power Rangers, and they want to introduce it to their kids because it's still around. You know, the silent generation, the baby boomers, a lot of the stuff that was around then isn't around anymore. But we're seeing brands that are carrying things that are happening around here all the way through here. So it's much easier to predict what is going to be more popular or what's going to be reintroduced at a certain point. So we've got a couple of slides on that. The other thing is they are extremely tech savvy, as I mentioned before. They communicate with images. The Gen Z handling 5 screens at once. We've shown this slide before, mostly because we're like 5 screens. How do you do that? But that could be a number of things. It could be a smartwatch. It could be an iPhone. It could be an iPad. It could be a TV screen. It could be anything that is a screen of some sort. And if you go through and you audit how many screens you have, you'd be surprised how many are available. So what we kind of came down to is it's a bit of a formula of a right platform, right nostalgia, right device equals a right remix. I'll kind of show what that means. So right platform is knowing where your audience is. The biggest piece behind this is by age. So the first chart shows by age which platform they're using. So the older people are using Facebook, and Tumblr is actually, Tumblr and Instagram are two of the youngest networks. So if you're going to be introducing a brand of some kind and you're doing it towards a younger generation, then be looking towards the upper end of this. The other piece is knowing by age where they're also consuming their mass media, which I would consider, and many of us would consider, that Netflix is a mass media medium. Not unlike cable TV, but cable TV is getting less and less relevant. You know, I used to wake up on Saturday mornings and run down and watch cartoons. You don't have to do that on Saturday anymore. They're available all the time on Netflix. You just turn on Netflix and away you go. And a generation that is being raised in that real-time availability, they're not going to want to go back. So you can imagine that if you can get on Netflix and if you can get on Amazon Prime potentially or Hulu Plus, then you're going to have a delivery system that is much like getting a major network signing on to your TV deal. And Netflix is doing a remarkable job at this. They have deals with DreamWorks and Power Rangers would be Saban Brands, and they've come up with some original material that is basically a movie will come out, like the movie Home came out, if you're familiar with it. That's a DreamWorks film. They came up with this animation short, basically. There's a TV show that coincides with it. Well, Netflix produced most of that, and it's not very good, but it's similar to the movie, and the movie was good enough to sustain that TV series. So it's interesting to see how that's changing. Next piece is right nostalgia. So just understanding generationally when things were introduced. We started to do an analysis of take somebody that was born in 1979, add 26 years, because they're usually on average 26 years old when they have their first kid, add another 6 years for their kid is mature enough to really understand what the mainstream media is, and then you can kind of circle back and see what was popular then, what's going to be popular again. That formula started to fall apart because Michael Bay just starts grabbing things that he likes and is like, I'm going to make some big production. But it still holds true is to know what's going to be moving forward, you've got to look backwards and be looking kind of the throwback stuff that is nostalgic. Because things aren't, as I mentioned before, the silent generation and the baby boomers, a lot of that stuff has been forgotten because it was never really documented. Things anymore, they last forever, it seems like. You can pull up a Wayback Machine and see what old websites look like, or you can just Google things and see what's out there, or they're just never really going away. Power Rangers, although felt like they went away, they actually had a long-standing TV show for 18 years before we even got to them. And it just wasn't very good for about 15 of that 18 years. And so everyone kind of forgot about them. And then they came back and they reproduced and they improved the brand. So. And then right device, just everything has to be on mobile. It's one piece to look at is augmented reality. A lot of people started to get behind VR, but the one thing I think Pokemon did extremely well was they understood that augmented reality has been around for a while. It's been around technically sound for at least 10 years, and Pokemon basically said, well, we're just going to put our layer on top of this world and bring in a brand that everyone's familiar with and make it kind of fun and gamify it. It was really that simple. But they went to mobile first. I mean, they really attached themselves to mobile. They understood that everybody's got either an Android or Apple device, and they can get the information instantaneously. So that's basically the gist of it. I mean, what we really wanted to focus on was, and we've got a couple predictions of what brands are going to be next, but the gist of it was the hype cycle is shortening. The technology is there for delivery system, and also just understanding timelines. What was old will be new again, and it'll happen over and over and over again. It's just finding what people find popular, and you can do a little bit of research, and you can get on the next train of what it is. The other point that we did want to make clear was that marketers that are savvy in this shouldn't look at Pokemon Go as a long-term strategy. It is something that it's like a train passing by. You should jump on and you should jump off. And you should know when those cycles actually happen. And Pokemon Go, you know, has the train slowed down? It slowed down pretty heavily, but it still has retaining at least 30 million active users, which is quite a bit. And you can still be a part of you can put Pokestops all over the place. You can get behind it with pop culture and developing content around it, so that you're attaching yourself to a kind of a cultural icon. But also know that it will play out eventually, and that it shouldn't be part of a long-term strategy. It should be something that is just, hey, this is part of our real-time strategy of something came along, we're getting a lot of people that are walking around the neighborhood looking at their screens. Well, let's give them free coffee if they come into our store, or let's give them a discount of some kind on a local level. So predictions. These were just a couple, and we did do quite a bit of thorough research on this, but the originality wasn't really there. Not like it was. There was something that happened in the 80s and 90s that just there was a lot more originality. But where we were finding originality was actually video games. Whereas it was TV shows before, we're actually seeing a lot more originality just coming from video games. So like your Halos and your Gears of War and those kind of things, those are very original in many respects. And they can be, and there isn't a whole lot that's been done with them. Halo, they have the machinima that's come out, and there's pieces of that, but there isn't a major motion picture that could happen with that kind of brand. Gears of War, same thing. Skylanders was kind of a dark horse in my mind, but that was something that was extremely original. And if you've got kids, you probably know what Skylanders is. But if you use your imagination, you could really exploit that brand, like blow it out to a couple of different ways, and it could be something big. Zelda, there actually is a major motion picture in the works. Minecraft, I think that I was talking to Michael earlier, there's a lot of things that could be done there. Sonic is one of those that I kind of laugh about because it seems like it always had the huge potential, but it never really took off. I'm still holding out hope for them because I liked playing the game when I was growing up, and just seeing them not be more than it could be kind of is a bummer. But these are the ones we came up with. There's probably millions more, but we tried to find ones that were kind of on the cusp of something that had some potential. So anyways, that's it. Oh, I went a little over. Any questions? Comments? Did I miss any brands? Probably.
What level of Pokemon Go are you?
0.
Did Nintendo really have anything to do with Pokemon Go?
Not really. No.
They're just kind of part of it. Just people thought they were.
Yeah. Well, it's because they own 1/3 of the company. So, but they're just a silent investor. They don't really do much with it. But yeah, the guys that are really doing everything, they're not updating fast enough. They've got patches that they put in there that aren't really working. There's a lot of ways that they are screwing up that the next brand that comes out with something could do something differently. So, we thought of like the Transformers. If the Transformers wanted to do something augmented reality, it would be awesome. I mean, you hold your phone up to a car of some kind, and you could even get like GM sponsoring it because they have Bumblebee, which is a Camaro. Hold that up to any GM, and you could see it transform on your phone, and then maybe you could like fight them, even though you wouldn't fight Bumblebee because he's cool. But you get what I'm saying is there's going to be brands that are going to take augmented reality, and they're going to improve on what Pokemon has done. Pokemon's done a good job, not a great job. It's time for somebody else to come in and do a really great job. But just like with anything, anytime they're producing these games, which they produce millions of games a year, they're kind of just throwing it to the wolves. They're seeing if it will stick. And that strategy may or may not work in the future, because if it does stick, they're not, at least from what Pokemon shows, they're not equipped to iterate fast enough to keep people interested over the long term. If they did focus on something like a major deal does, like Gears of War and Halo, those guys, they work on those games for years, 2 to 3 years beforehand, and they know they have a solid brand behind this. So if Pokemon wanted to re-release and do something that was much more substantial, they could think more long term. They could say, okay, well, we're going to have the servers to back it up. We're going to have patches that are going to be available. We're going to have upgrades at these particular times. And Pokemon might even fade out before Nintendo even releases their wristband that they had, which was this Pokemon wristband, which they're like, oh, it's right around the corner, get on the waiting list. And then so many users, 10 million users that were really excited about it could be gone by the time they even ship. So they'll be much more prepared for it by then. Anything else?
It was interesting the way this kind of came into the news was because it was driving sales for foot traffic at locations. And I think, future casting, when people think of augmented reality, we always kind of imagine more like Minority Report, where the marketers are directing sales through the augmented reality. But this was like, hey, play this game, and the sort of almost result of it was people ending up somewhere, right?
Right.
Do you see any other sort of wild card uses for this product in terms of marketing and advertising for future brands?
So marketing and advertising, using augmented reality for marketing and advertising? I could see brands like REI and outdoor companies hopefully grabbing onto this, because right now they're just using wearables for it, which isn't a bad thing, but you can't gamify a wearable really well. You can compare, they have charts online of this is how I did against this person, but if you really wanted to mesh those two things together, it's how does REI and maybe a film release coming out about maybe Everest, the movie Everest comes out. And they're like, climb every mountain in your area, and you could gamify something like that through augmented reality. And then you achieve some point, and you maybe do a selfie, and it's got a little, you got your Everest gear on or something with a selfie. Who knows? But I think there's a lot. I think brands need to stop thinking about monetizing it immediately, and more thinking about how we can make it make an individual sticky with our brand, so they identify themselves with that brand moving forward. Not so much how can we get the cash register to ring like that. It's more how do I get the competitors not to be in consideration anymore.
So how do you think things like Snapchat, for example, a lot of people are using that and they're putting the little filters and the overlays and things like that. I mean, it's really cool that it's location-based as well, because they started putting like the city tags and things like that in there. I mean, what do you see is maybe like Zelda, for example, like now you have your armor on or you have a shield or something like that. Like what are the ways, what are the different platforms that you think would be best for this kind of thing?
Well, Snapchat used, I mean, they worked with Doritos and they worked with Gatorade, I think, where you could have Gatorade during the Super Bowl, you could show a filter where Gatorade was being poured on your head kind of thing. And that's, I mean, that's essentially one-off monetization, if you will. And I mean, on the individual level, I would say Snapchat, that's what it's limited to, because Snapchat is more of a entertainment source, not so much of an interactive game. I mean, people don't really think of that when they think of gaming. So it's just two different things. I think Snapchat would be good for awareness more of something else that was out there. So maybe combining Snapchat and Pokemon, saying, to your point, almost like Zelda. It's like, this is you can do an armor piece, but this is the game if you want to really involve yourself or immerse yourself with the adventure kind of thing.
With adoption and abandonment happening in such quick cycles, do you foresee it becoming a difficult sell to a brand to invest the amount of time, resources, and money to build these rather complex augmented reality systems, only to have them adopted and abandoned before you get your money back?
I think that maybe in the short run it might be difficult, but I think this is, with any kind of new technology, you stand on the shoulders of giants, basically. Okay, you just try to iterate and be better than the last guy. And if somebody uses this as a case study and they realize what they could do better the next time, I think that it makes a really good case to keep pushing forward with it. Because I'm not completely, and I'm not sure society necessarily is completely bought into VR yet. You know, they're not there yet. They still, and they will be, I think, eventually. You got to boost a lot of things for it. You know, you got to make sure a lot of pieces are in place. But augmented reality is still, it's readily available, and it doesn't require total immersion. You know, yes, there's stories of people falling off cliffs and getting, you know, a lot of bad stuff with Pokemon. But imagine if they're wearing VR sets, how easy it would be to pick somebody's pocket wearing a VR set. So it's still involved with your environment around you. And I think that brands should embrace something like that, is that they should look at it as, we've got 45 million potential users, daily active users. Twitter would they would do a lot of things just to get that type of daily active users back. So to answer your question, I think that it should give them skepticism of what they're doing and make sure it's purposeful, but I don't think that it should stop them from at least exploring it and trying it if it's good for their brand. Anyone else? Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys. One quick note, we do have our next Firestarter is going to be on holiday marketing strategy. And yes, it comes in September. And considering that I was in a store yesterday and they had Halloween stuff set out, it kind of freaked me out. Missy's probably like, woohoo! But it is going to be on companies that did it well last year, companies that did it poorly, and companies that just did the same thing they've been doing for the last 20 years. Macy's. So we're going to explore all the different facets of what a company can do to arm themselves ready for the next year or the holiday season. So, all right, thank you.